is that you're gonna use your ovich and you're gonna start shredding these part into thin hairs or somewhat like thin hair. So you're gonna just use this and you're just gonna split the takwi into thin strips. And you're gonna do that with all sides. So grab an ovich. And just continue to split them until they're like this, look like fringes. So instead of 4 or 3 pieces of takwi sticking out at each end, you're just gonna split them all in half, then half again, then half again, then half again.
How many?
Until however you feel. Because
Oh, it's just a difference.
so now this part is gonna be up to you. So I kind of leave mine like this. It's still kind of thin, but it's still, you can still see it.
Do the other?
Because when you start splitting the mojo, the bear grass, you're gonna want it at this thickness.
Okay.
So when this part is done, then this comes the fun part. As soon as this part's done. Now that you got this part done by splitting the takwi into fringes, you want to try and keep it wet, but not too wet, more like damp, because if it gets too dry, it becomes more brittle because it is a plant. So it's gonna look like this, kind of a frayed out looking cross. And now when you get to this part, you're gonna start, this is where the weaving part's actually gonna start. So you're gonna take a piece of takwi and you're gonna clean it. This one's already clean. It's feeling kind of dry, so I'm gonna wet it. And now you're gonna find a corner. You're gonna find a corner, any corner. You can get the ugliest one. You can get the most slanted corner. You can get the most perfect corner. You can go off by the fringes, however you want to do it, but you're just gonna pick a corner. So I usually pick the ugly corner. They all kind of look ugly to me. So I'm gonna use this corner right here, and I'm gonna take my ovich and I'm gonna poke, kind of towards the edge, but not really, like this. And I'm not gonna poke through all the way. Probably like what, 1/4 inch in. Take my takwi. After it's clean, you want to keep the curved part up, and the part that curves like this. The inside's gonna be up. You're gonna stick the pointy end in, because that's gonna be your needle. Once it gets through, you're gonna get it until as far as you can without breaking it. So now we have this little piece sticking up. In all of them, they call this is your namas. This is your starting point. This is your marker. So from this point on, throughout your whole basket, this is what you're gonna be guided by. So for instance, on one of my previous baskets, from where I started from, my ugly corner, which was here, I followed it all the way through to here, where I'm gonna start my pattern. Then I followed it all the way down until I finished. It's kind of from the middle where I first started to I started my pattern into where I ended. That's how my baskets usually come out, because that's my marker. Because every time I go around 1 or 2 rounds, I would hammer it to keep this nice and flat and even. And it's kind of like, it's a marker. Then that's wherever you started from, that's where you're gonna finish it. So then now you're gonna you're gonna poke the next one over, not too far, but right next to it, into your previous stitch. So, yeah, so everything's gonna be going counterclockwise from now on. And this part here is gonna be bent down so that when you start, you're gonna pull it through and just wrap. I usually tuck this tail in here to keep the takui nice and tight, but for right now, I'm gonna leave it up out and open because so I can show how or when I started my basket. And if it doesn't go through all the way like how I'm having issues, just take it out and poke it again. But I don't want the hole too big because it'll be, I might, like let's say it might just rip it. Because I don't want to rip this foundation. This middle part is what I'm going to be weaving into for right now until I finish my first round. So that's my first stitch. And see, I pulled it too tight and that's what happens. So you gotta just do it again. And as I stated before, if you have any questions or if you have any issues or complications and you wish to get a hold of me, just call Drew, give him a text or a call, and he'll shoot me the question that whatever you may have. So that's my stitch, my very first stitch again. I probably go over at 160 inches across.
What? 100 and what? I'm ready to start. Nice. Pick your corner. You're all listening to me.
You're welcome when
There
I
you
see it
go.
doesn't look so.
So that's how the beginning of the
So
basket
great.
starts. And then you're just gonna go all the way around until you get back here to the middle. Way down so far, it took like maybe about a good 7 or 8 stitches. But now I got to another corner, so as I'm bundling them all together, we're just simply just bundling it and just wrapping your foundation as you go. And that's all there is to it until we get to the part where we're gonna have to start adding the bear grass to it. And so the bear grass, I mean, it's gonna take a while to get used to it, but as soon as you get the rhythm going and you get going at a steady pace, you'll be fine. So as I come closer to another corner, this is my last corner before I get to the point of meeting where I start.
See, they keep starting.
And you will notice that because as you're going, you're bundling the other parts together, that your tail's gonna be getting a little thicker. And that's the good thing, because then when you get down to where you first start your first stitch, you're gonna know how thick you're gonna need it for when you start adding your bear grass to your tail. And so there's different ways to add the bear grass to the tail as you go, But for right now, we're just getting up to this point of just wrapping the entire tail together. And it kind of looks like a shell, one of those circle shells like the one on the Little Mermaid. Yeah, these guys got teamwork going on.
My teeth and stuff.
The dentures ain't When the guy caught them.
He said dentures will probably be better.
So now that I'm back to the part where I first started,
Is too thick?
this is where you would either hammer or keep going. Normally I would hammer it by putting it down on like on a stump or like
I'm gonna have to wet my hands now.
on a stump that has like a piece of cloth on it, and using a rubber or wooden mallet to kind of flatten it out, because you want to pound it down to keep it flat. If you pound it too hard, you have a high chance of actually breaking the takui, and then you're gonna start having issues after that, because you know once that you start breaking or cracking your takui, then that kind of it makes the basket more brittle and it'll start to fall apart, and it creates cracking and other tears that you don't want. And the more you do pound, you just got to keep it gentle and try to cover it with a cloth as you go. So that's the very beginning, first step.